Think about something you've gotten really good at.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a sport, could be a language, or just finding your way around a new town.
Yeah.
It always seems to start with habits, doesn't it? Those
Hmm.
basic moves you have to get down pat before you can even think about, like, the bigger picture strategy.
Like learning the chess moves before you plan checkmate.
Exactly.
Right.
But here's the twist we're looking at today.
Hmm.
What if those very habits, the things that got us going, actually start to, well, hold us back?
Hmm.
What if they make us less sensitive to feedback? Maybe we plateau or even, slip a bit. That's the big question for this deep dive based on the sources you shared. Can our good habits actually limit us?
It's a great question. And yeah, that's exactly what we're digging into, this paradox, how
Mhm.
the stuff that helps us initially can, if we're not careful, become these invisible walls to getting better.
Okay.
So we'll explore how these routines can kind of stall our progress and, more importantly, what we can actually do about it. Our sources really stress self-awareness and adaptability here.
Adaptability, right? It's not just building habits, but also, refining them, maybe even questioning them sometimes.
Precisely. It seems like real mastery needs both. You need the automatic habits, for sure, but you also need this layer of deliberate focus on top.
Okay, so our mission today is unpacking that combination. Let's start with this paradox of good habits. How does that work?
Okay, so habits are fundamental, right? Like
Yeah.
we said with chess, once the basics are automatic, your brain is free.
Yeah, freed up for the fancy stuff, the strategy.
Exactly. And that happens everywhere. Repetition builds that fluency, that speed, that initial skill. You're not stumbling over the basics anymore.
Right, you're not thinking about how to do the thing, you're thinking about what to do next. But, okay, here's the catch you mentioned.
Yeah, here's the rub. As those habits get really automatic, we can actually become, well, less tuned in to the feedback, the little cues that could help us get even better.
Like we switch on to autopilot.
That's the perfect word for it. Autopilot. The source puts it really well. When you can do it good enough on autopilot, you stop thinking about how to do it better.
Ooh, that's sharp.
Isn't it? You fall into just mindless repetition. And those little mistakes, the tiny edges you could be sharpening, they just slip by.
Yeah, unnoticed.
And there's even research suggesting that once you feel you've mastered something, your performance might actually dip slightly if you're not, actively working to maintain it.
Wow, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of unsettling. You think you're just racking up experience, but maybe you're just reinforcing good enough.
Or even reinforcing tiny flaws. Now, obviously, you don't need like a 6-point improvement plan for brushing your teeth, right?
No, probably not. Some things are fine on autopilot.
Exactly. For routine stuff, automaticity is great, frees up your brain.
Uh-huh.
But when you're really aiming high, trying to max out your potential,
That's when good enough isn't good enough anymore.
that's when you need that conscious, deliberate approach. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and expect to reach, elite levels. Habits get you started, but they're not the whole journey to mastery.
Okay, so that leads us perfectly into what our source calls the equation for mastery, which is
Simple, but powerful. Habits plus deliberate practice equals mastery.
habits plus deliberate practice, mastery.
Okay.
And it's how they work together. That's
Oh.
key. The source has some great examples, like basketball players.
Right.
You need to be able to dribble without thinking. Then you can focus on the tough stuff,
Yeah.
like a non-dominant hand layup.
Or the surgeon example, that first incision needs to be almost automatic.
So they can focus on all the complex, unpredictable stuff happening during the surgery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like each habit you really lock down becomes a new floor, a base camp for the next climb.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. The source even mentions a figure 16 showing this layering effect. Each improvement builds on the last.
Mastery isn't some static thing you reach. It's a cycle. You internalize one skill, make it a habit, and that lets you tackle the next harder thing.
So it never really gets easier overall because you're always pushing into new territory.
Exactly. The old parts might feel easier, but you're constantly raising the bar. As the source says, each habit unlocks the next level of performance. It's an endless cycle.
An endless cycle. Okay, so if just relying on habits can lead to stagnation, what's the antidote? How do we stay on that upward curve?
This is where reflection and review come in. That's the key the sources point to.
Reflection and review. Okay.
This is the conscious part. It stops us getting complacent once things feel easy or automatic. It's about deliberately stepping back, looking at how we're actually doing over time.
And the source uses a fantastic story here, right? The '86 Lakers.
Oh, yeah, the Pat Riley story. It's perfect.
All
So
right.
you've got this incredibly talented Lakers team, starts the season strong, but then they kind of fizzle out in the playoffs,
Yeah.
unexpectedly. And Riley, the coach, he wasn't just okay with talent. He wanted consistent peak effort, which led him to create this program called Career Best Effort, or CBE.
Career best effort, CBE. What did that actually involve?
It was pretty intense. First, Riley did this thing called taking their number. He tracked player stats way back, even to high school, to get a real baseline.
Wow, okay.
Then, the core idea was simple but demanding. Each player had to improve their overall performance by at least 1% compared to their established baseline over the season.
Just 1%. Sounds small, but I guess consistently.
Consistently, across everything, it adds up. If they hit that 1% improvement, that was a career best effort.
But it wasn't just stats like points or rebounds, was it?
No, and that's crucial. Riley stressed it was about total effort, spiritual, mental, physical. He even included unsung hero deeds.
Like the hustle plays, taking a charge, things that don't always show up.
Exactly, those crucial team-first actions. There's an example with Magic Johnson's CBE score. They took positive stats, points, rebounds, assists, steals, added a credit for an unsung hero play, subtracted turnovers,
Yep.
and then divided that whole sum by the minutes he played. That gave his CBE number, like 0.879 in the example, which they scaled to 879.
And Riley used these numbers quite strategically, I gather, not just for individual tracking.
Oh, absolutely. He compared players to their own past selves, obviously, but also against players in similar roles across the league.
Really? He'd show them how they stacked up against rivals.
Yeah, a sports writer, Jackie McMullen, talked about how Riley would put the league's top performers at each position up on the blackboard right next to his players' CBE numbers. Talk about motivation.
No kidding. And he had benchmarks.
He did. Like the 600s were solid NBA players, 800 plus was all-star level, and Magic was apparently often over 1,000.
Wow. And they tracked this month by month, year over year.
Yeah, comparing monthly CBE data to previous years, it was a systematic way to ensure actual improvement, not just coasting.
And the results.
Well, they launched CBE in October '86, the following June, NBA champions.
Oh.
And they won again the year after that. First team to go back-to-back in like 20 years.
Okay, so the system worked.
It seems so. Riley himself said something like, "Sustaining an effort is the most important thing. Learn how to do things right, then do them the same way every time." CBE was the mechanism for that sustained, improving effort.
It really highlights how that structured review forces awareness.
Yeah.
You see the dips, the errors, you have to think about how to fix them.
Exactly. Without that, the source points out it's easy to make excuses, to drift, because you lack that objective benchmark for progress.
And this idea of reflecting on performance isn't just for sports teams, right? The source mentioned others.
Yeah, it's fascinating how widespread it is among top performers. Eliud Kipchoge, the marathon runner, still takes notes after every single run, reviewing, looking for tweaks.
Incredible discipline.
Or Katie Ledecky, the swimmer, tracks everything: wellness, food, sleep, competitor times. Her coach reviews it all.
So data is key there too.
Seems like it. And it's not just athletes. Comedian Chris Rock testing jokes in small clubs, notebook out, marking what lands, what bombs.
Refining the act based on feedback.
Precisely. Even executives and investors keeping decision journals, writing down big decisions, why they made them, what they expected, and then reviewing later.
Learning from past choices. It really seems like this reflective habit is a common denominator for sustained success.
Yeah.
So how can, regular people like us apply this?
Well, the source offers a couple of practical personal frameworks.
Okay, like what?
The first is an annual review, usually done in December. You basically tally up your habits for the year, articles written, workouts done, trips taken, whatever matters to you.
So a quantitative look back.
Yeah, and then you ask 3 core questions. What went well this year? What didn't go so well? And crucially, what did I learn?
Simple questions, but probably quite revealing.
Definitely. And then, about 6 months later, the suggestion is an integrity report.
Integrity report. What's that about?
This one's more about your core values. Are you living in alignment with them? The questions are, what are my core values? How am I living and working with integrity right now? And how can I set a higher standard for myself going forward?
That's a deeper dive into the why behind the what.
Exactly. And the point is, these reviews don't need to take forever, maybe a few hours each, but they act as these vital checks, these periods of refinement.
Preventing that slow drift, that complacency we talked about.
Right. And they help reinforce the identity you want to have, making sure your habits actually align with who you aspire to be.
There's a neat analogy in the source about perspective, isn't there?
Yeah, comparing it to looking in a mirror, daily habits are like being an inch away. You see every tiny flaw, lose the big picture.
Okay.
Never reviewing is like never looking in the mirror at all. You're just guessing.
So reflection is like stepping back.
Stepping back to a conversational distance. You see the important things, the overall picture, the significant changes needed, without getting lost in like every single pore. You see the mountain range, not just the pebbles at your feet.
That makes sense. See the whole landscape. Okay, so there's one more big piece the source explores. This idea of the identity trap.
Ah, yes. This is subtle, but really important.
How the identity we build from our good habits can actually end up limiting us. How does that work?
Well, think about it. Early on, habits build identity. I work out every morning, therefore I'm a disciplined person. That feels good, reinforces the behavior.
Right, positive feedback loop.
But as that identity gets stronger, it can create this pride. And that pride can make us resistant to seeing our own weaknesses or trying new things that might challenge that identity.
Like the examples given.
Yeah.
The teacher who dismisses new methods because that's not how I teach.
Exactly. Or the veteran manager stuck in their ways, the surgeon who won't listen to younger colleagues, the band that can't evolve after one hit album because they're stuck in that initial identity.
So the identity becomes rigid.
It can, yeah. The source brings in advice from Paul Graham. Keep your identity small.
Keep your identity small.
Meaning, don't tie your entire sense of self so tightly to one specific role or belief. Because if you do, and that role changes, or that belief is challenged, it becomes much harder to adapt.
Like the identity crises mentioned, the athlete retiring, the soldier leaving the military, the founder selling their company.
Exactly. If athlete is 100% of who you are, what happens when you can't compete anymore? It's devastating.
So the solution is redefining.
Redefining your identity around the underlying qualities rather than the specific role. So it's not, I am an athlete, but maybe I'm the type of person who is mentally tough and loves a physical challenge.
So that quality can be expressed in new ways, even if the original role is gone.
Precisely. I'm a great soldier becomes I'm disciplined, reliable, and great on a team. Those traits are transferable.
Makes sense. Keep the core, but allow the expression to be flexible.
Yeah, there's even a quote from the Tao Te Ching about being soft and supple versus stiff and inflexible. The stiff things break.
While the supple ones endure.
Right. Life changes constantly. So our habits, our beliefs, even our identities need these periodic checkups to make sure they're still actually serving us.
Otherwise, we risk becoming rigid and outdated in our own lives.
And as the source puts it so well, a lack of self-awareness is poison. Reflection and review is the antidote.
That really ties it all together. Okay, so let's try and summarize the key takeaways in this deep dive.
Okay, so first off, habits are crucial, absolutely essential for building any kind of skill or foundation. But
they aren't the whole story. Relying only on automatic habits can lead to autopilot, complacency, even decline.
right. True mastery seems to require both automaticity and that conscious, deliberate practice layered on top.
And the bridge between those two, the thing that keeps the cycle of improvement going, is regular reflection and review.
Exactly. Whether that's a superstructured system like the Lakers CBE or something more personal like those annual reviews or integrity reports.
It's about consciously checking in, making sure our habits are aligned with our goals, adapting them as needed, and even being willing to evolve our sense of identity along the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about staying awake at the wheel, essentially.
Okay, great discussion.
Yeah.
So to leave everyone with something to think about, consider one area of your life where you feel you've built some strong habits. Ask yourself honestly, how often do you really truly step back and evaluate if those habits are still pushing you forward? Or could they, maybe subtly, be holding you back from whatever that next level might be for you? What's one small act of reflection you could maybe try this week just to gain a little fresh perspective?
A powerful question to ponder.
Indeed. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.